Okay, let me start. So, who am I? I've already told you. Okay. So, what is open source? Uh, so there are like you might have used some software which are free to use, uh, but uh, but you cannot actually look into the code, or the software are available as an executable file and be shipped with some DLL. So you are not able to look actually what they are doing behind the scenes. So software is basically a software which you are getting for free. For example, you are using Facebook for free, for using Instagram, but eventually you don't know what will on or how they are built. So open source, on the other hand, where are look at the code and like that. Open source software are mostly freeware as well. So few of the open source softwares are Firefox, like VLC is there. Linux itself is open source. Android itself is open source. So you can use them for free. You can look at the code of the software. You can modify them. You can create your own different versions of the software. Some of them even allow you to ship them on your own name and commercialize them. So the basic difference between using a software for free and open source is that you are able to look at the whole code and whatever they are doing behind the scenes, behind in the code. Okay, so why should we care? So open source is currently like kind of a movement is there. So you can think of like there is right to there's freedom of expression and everything. So people believe that source code should be available as much as possible. There is a movement called free and open software movement. FOSS is there, and so on, uh, kind of. And uh, if you open source a particular segment of code, or if you open source your whole project, there are millions of people who might be able to look at your code, who might be able to make suggestions, make changes, and uh, make the whole software a better solution to anything. So there is the aspect of improving the solution based on a community effort. Uh, okay, so created to help or ease the lives of other people. So yeah, we can believe that eventually most of the source code would be open. That's the movement all about. And there are other licensing and stuff that goes on to authorize the ownership of the code, who has the code and who can modify it. There's a whole different licenses are available for different types of rights over the code. So that is their benefit large corporations. So what happens if a particular is open source, that is being improved on a regular basis. People who actually contribute to the code are also the consumers at their end. So it happens that you are using Firefox, for example, and you find a bug in there. And if you are a developer or maybe just a user, you can pinpoint the bug on their uh, issues. And if you are a developer, you can go on and make the changes there. So it happens. that open source software are updated on a frequent. Closed source software, so new versions very quickly, and they are always asking for new updates or kind of that. So that happens, uh, and large organizations have started to use open source on a very vast basis. So companies like Microsoft, which have never uh, used open source, or which uh, always were closed source like software. So they started moving towards open source. They started to visualize the benefit of having it. You can view more and more software being open source by Microsoft in general today. As mentioned, Microsoft Edge, which is improvement over Internet Explorer, is now based on Chromium. Chrome itself is based on Chromium, and Chromium is an open source web browser. So you can believe that in general, open source is benefiting large organizations, and to reciprocate this benefit, large organizations like Microsoft or Google, they all tend to support open source. They all tend to help open source in some way or the other. So how to make a contribution? So we have so many outlets you can make a contribution to any software which is open source. We have GitHub, which is kind of like a huge repository of every kind of open source software you can find, every type of software you can look at and contribute to. We will explain a little process of doing contribution to a GitHub repository. But so far, like, yeah. So you just need to have a little understanding of what the software is built on, the stack, for example, the language the software is written in. Then you can just go on to its repository and look at the issues. And if you find anything that you may be able to work on, you can ping there that you are working on. You can then uh, fork the repository, make some changes, and then send a PR to the repository itself. There are mentors, there are other contributors who would help you, who would guide you if they feel you are on the right direction. They will help you. And if your solution is okay, if it fixes the issue, your solution will be merged into the larger software, and you will get uh, the software will have your code. You will get the authorship of the code as well. So whenever someone looks at the history of the code, your name will be there that you have contributed this segment of code. Page. So yeah, so you can always go on to GitHub. There is also other portals. There is GitLab. Few of the open source code is there. There are others as well, but majorly you can look into GitHub, and you will get to know a lot of software on particular stack or technology. Okay, what is Git or GitHub? So uh, Git is basically a version control system. So consider a particular software. You are working on it. Your friend is also working on it. There are many people working on at the same time. You all are making changes to particular files. You all are making changes to particular part of the code, and maybe at the same time. So software like Git helps you to control the different versions that are being written at the same time. So it also maintains the history of the changes that is being made. So you may be writing a particular part of code, then your friend also wants to add to it. both of their changes will be um, checked, and based on that, a particular history is generated that can be replayed, that can be you can anytime move back to a particular version. So you made some changes, and afterwards you find that the changes are not helping out or making the situation worse. You can always go back to a particular a past version and then start afresh. So that is a version control system. Git is the most popular version control system, and if you are into software field, I would suggest you to at least have a basic course on that, and at least be familiar with that. There are like Git is a very handy tool, and it is a very easy to learn software, I guess. There are other advanced ways of doing version controls, but you may not need it until you find some issues, and you can always go on internet to check the different options available with Git. So only you may just need to learn a like 10 or 12 some Git commands. You are always able to use Git efficiently. Uh, there are other version control systems. If we Git is just one of the most popular ones. There is Mercury, and others are there as well. So just the knowledge of Git is enough. You can always look into others if you want. But if you just wish to start, Git is the best option, and you can jump to GitHub. So uh, GitHub is trying to become the front end of Git. So all the options that are available with Git, you can find a UI version on the GitHub. You can have other softwares which are also better uh, way of handling that. But a basic understanding of Git is you will always need, and you will always be happy to know about it. So this is for open source. So you know Git, you know GitHub. You can head to an open source software. You can make changes, and your code will be accepted, and you have made a contribution. So this is the open source. You don't get paid for doing that. This is like a voluntary step, voluntary uh, thing. You do it for understanding concepts. You do it for getting mentorship, uh, and only for that. And if you look into the open source itself, the people who are contributing to it, most of them are not getting paid. Most of them are not getting any benefits other than contributing to open source. So this is most people do for their as a hobby. Most people just do it for their voluntary as a voluntary action for just passing their time. So open source is built on that. People who just want to contribute to the community, just want to give something back to the community and learn along with other people or socialize. It's kind of like socializing for developers, kind of. But eventually, the whole community effort becomes something like React is one of these, like Angular is a community effort, Firefox, everything which is open source. Someday or other, they get big, and eventually large organizations are using it, and they want to give back to it. So programs like Google Summer of Code are a way of Google saying that we support open source. So uh, for you, what is Google Summer of Code? So for you, Google Summer of Code is an annual global program which Google manages. You are not directly hired by Google. So that is the point here. Google just manages it. Google just provides you with the stipend uh, only. and maybe provide you some goodies and other things. The program focuses on bringing more student developers into the open source project development. Students are, I believe, the uh, most important aspect of open source. People who are in their jobs, they don't get enough time. So for them, time is the most important resource, and they are not able to contribute much. You are students, so you as a students are having a lot of time which you may use to contribute. It also helps you gain enough insight. It also helps you uh, get to network to people who are already working in the technology you may be interested in future. So this programs like Google Summer of Code helps you, uh, like it helps open source to get more student developers. So students get involved. They may stick with the organizations and later on contribute something very important and eventually progress the open source. You get to work with an open source organization. You get to choose your projects. You work for 3 months with the open source organization, with the community members, with your mentors, and complete the project. Afterwards, after every month, you will get stipend, and Google will give you recognition that you have been part of this program. They may provide you with goodies. Okay, so in general, I would say that programs like Google Summer of Code is the best way to get into the open source. But open source is bigger than this. The stipend is very awesome if you say according to the standards of our standard. Stipend is very good, uh, and the engagement you get to do with the community, the networking you get to do with your fellow Google GSOC students, and uh, the community members who may be working at Google itself, who knows, and that will eventually help you later on after even you finish the Google Summer of Code internship. So that is all the Summer of Code gets you. Eligibility criteria is basically you must be older than 18 years of age at the time of registration. So at the time of registration, you should be a student as well. So uh, Google Summer of Code is basically for students. So if you are able to show some proof that at the time of your selection you are a student, you are okay with the process. So even if you are joining a company later on, even if you're passing out in July and you are selected as a Google Summer of Code developer in May, you get to work on the project. So you are not debarred from the system. You are able to work. You just have to uh, like make the organization believe that you are able to work on it, even if you are in job. So that is it. If you are joining some other university afterwards, you have to show the proof that at the time of your selection you are going to join other university or something. You must be a student, whether an undergraduate, a graduate, or a PhD. You must be a student. Even it does not matter that you are an engineering student. You can be from arts, commerce, or anything. You just need to be a student. And there you should be eligible to work in the country, which we all are. And yeah, and you should not be already a mentor of any program. So you cannot be a mentor and a student developer at the same time. Am I good enough? So uh, I would say that anyone who just who has a knack for contributing can be selected into GSOC. So it depends on the organization, the number of students applying to it, the priority of the project you want to take, the priority of the project the organizations want to have, and Even if you have not coded a single line of code, but you are willing to learn, I would say that you should try. The proper timeline of trying is already started. So I believe that anyone who wants to crack GSOC should start at least from September. So you should have a proper timeline to contribute and know the project. Also, there are not a lot of people contributing at the time of September. While in the months of January and February, there are so many people, so many students trying to fight for issues and uh, sending pull requests. So if you have already not started, I would suggest you to start. Uh, Go on GitHub, go on Google Summer of Code's website. Try to find a project which an organization uh, which is already working. Wait. Uh, so try to find an organization which takes part in Google Summer of Code and start contributing. Uh, People would suggest that you should try to find an organization where you already have some knowledge about the stack, but it eventually just matters for very sophisticated projects. So there are projects which are easy to do. There are projects which are very advanced on the very advanced level. So it depends on your ability to learn. I would suggest if you are interested in machine learning, if you are interested in deep learning, you should try to contribute to projects like that. You should go on to the GitHub repo and start looking for issues, start looking for the uh, like project ideas, and try to learn stuff, try to approach the problem statement some way or the other, and try to communicate it with mentors or the people who are leading the particular part of project. And you should just start doing it. So it will give you some incentive to work on your goals, and you will eventually succeed. If you start from September, I believe it is a very long time from September to the organizations are uh, uh, announced in February. So this is a very long interval. You can learn anything you want, and uh, you may get selected on the basis of the contribution you make. So the timeline is uh, very good if you start from September. If you already have some understanding about a stack and you wish to progress in that as well, that is very good. It just removes that learning curve where you will have to learn things. You can directly jump into contributing. You can directly jump into making pull requests, and the number of contributions, the number of pull requests you make will eventually help you get through the Google Summer of Code. So every project has a different criteria, kind of, but you can assume that it depends on your contribution. 70% of your proposal is based on what you have contributed because you get to know things. 30% is your own ideas on what you want to achieve. So that is there. Based on your contribution and your proposal, you are selected in any organization. Okay. So what are the benefits of getting into GSOC? So you get the recognition part. You can put it on your LinkedIn, and you will get a lot of headhunts just based on having GSOC on your LinkedIn. You get to network a lot of people. So most of the GSOCers would eventually be very helpful to you. You can we get to have a separate uh, Slack channel, and we create our own Telegram channels, we create our own Discord channel. So we can anytime go to that and network among us. Uh, if someone is very good at machine learning and stuff, we can discuss with them, and they are all very happy to help in general. So that is there. Your mentors would be there. So your mentors may be working in very large organizations, maybe Google itself, and other companies, and uh, you can ping them anytime for any help or any referral you would want. Stipend is there. Stipend is a very uh, good thing. You will eventually get to know. I will tell you stipend afterwards. And referral is there, so uh, we get to fill a form, and we are included in a particular Slack channel of Google that is called Connect with Google. So anytime some courses or some other news that comes up, uh, Google pings us. Or there's also an internal referral system. So whenever you apply to any Google internship or Google's full-time roles, if you have already filled the form, your data is in the system, you will get a referral. So I don't know about if this is happening from this year as well, but at our time we have had to fill the form, and it was very beneficial. And chance to mentor. So Google Summer of Code students, GSOC students are for organizations are the best mentors there are. So if you work on a software this year, you get to mentor the very next year if you want to, and that is also a very good experience. You get to like mentor a student who will be in your school and working on your project. And I guess Google has uh, a trip scheduled for all the mentors. So after the GSOC happens, Google calls all the GSOC mentors to their California office, and you will get to spend some days with Google. This time, this is not happening because of Corona, but from next year, it will also happen. So being a GSOC mentor is also very beneficial. You will also get recognition for that. You don't need to be a GSOC student to become a GSOC mentor, but you are very. It is very good to have a GSOC student as a GSOC mentor. There are these are the basic benefits of being a GSOC developer, student developer, and also you get to learn on the stack you are working on. So a software that you may be working on would be having all the software development uh, life cycle, uh, life cycle points. So you will get to do the testing part. You will get to work on the CI part, continuous integration part, continuous development part. So you just not get to write the code. You will have to test yourself. You will have to uh, check if the test passes or fails, um, and you have to interact with the community over that. If some bug is reported over that, you will have to fix that. So you will get to know the code in general, the process in general, and your stack. Uh, that is, and and all the all such organizations and the code they have, the code base they have is very large. So one benefit of being a GSOC developer is that you get to work on a very large code base. So in the very beginning, students start to overwhelmed by the by the amount of code they will have to process. But if you are able to do that in the GSOC, then afterwards, if you get into an organization in the job, you, the benefit will be pretty much you will travel between the code base very efficiently. And from the suggestion is from me that is very beneficial, at least for me, that I get to uh, the development time for me is very low based on that. So that is the primary benefits of actually doing Google Summer of Code. How to start? Yeah, so like I said, you should try to follow your interest, because you will be working for 3 months. If you don't follow your interest, uh, you may not like after 1 month or so. If you have very interest in the work you are doing, it will eventually uh, help you to pass through all the 3 months and get evaluated every month and get the stipend every month. But you can also look for the technology you are already comfortable in if you already have some interest in the field. Selecting the project and organization. So it is that has allotted a number of slots to each organization. Google allots every year. So based on the size of organization, based on the number of proposals, students actually participate in that, and the projects and other factors. Google allocate different number of slots to each project, and even there's a chance that an organization may not be selected for Google Summer of Code. So at the end of January, every organization has to submit a proposal to the Google. I guess in the end of February, Google releases the names of all the organizations that have been selected by Google, and afterwards you are allowed to make the proposals. And in the end, in the between of May, you are selected. So I will explain the timeline in detail later on. But it may happen that an organization that you are contributing for the past 3 months may not be selected. And if the organization is selected, it has got only 2 slots, and you may not be, you know that there are, you know that there may be a chance that you may not be selected. So that is there. So you should actually go to the Google Summer of Codes archives and look at all the projects that at least have happened successively in the past 3 or 4 years. Based on that, you can assume that a particular organization is uh, going to be selected for the next Google Summer of Code. You can also go to their community pages, their IRC channels, their GitHub channels, or Slack if they have. So, and ask them that if they are going to send a proposal or not. So, so you won't waste your time if you just want to get into GSOC this year, and if you only have one chance of getting into GSOC. So just go to the project's website and ask the mentors if they are willing to participate in GSOC this year. And based on historical data, if Google is going to select them, and also the number of slots they are given by the number of projects they did last year and the year before that. So you will have to like figure out if you want to contribute to the organization for the coming 3 months or 4 months. Understanding the project. So you have selected your organization. Now you get you go to their IRC channel, you go to their other channels and communicate with the mentors, uh, other contributors, uh, how to start contributing. Most of them have a contributors page. You can directly go to that. They have instructions. So Some of them use GitHub, some of them don't use GitHub. There are organizations which use GitLab, and some of them which use something completely different for version control system. So you will have to figure it out. The organizations vary in different ways, and it is your responsibility to know uh, where to make changes. And in general, most organizations use GitHub and Git. In general, most organizations have a channel on uh, IRC or newer channels like Gitter and Slack or something. So you can always, or you have to always go through this process of looking for contributors guidelines. Based on that, you have to copy the project into your local system. You may need to sign a CLA agreement. So for ownership, there are agreements between you and the open source organization that the code you are submitting to them, uh, the organization is able to freely use it. So it depends on organization. So this is the initial step is to get the system, get the code to your system. Then you have to understand the basic flow of the code or the basic parts of the code. Before jumping on anything, you may need to go to documentation and understand the whole software, how it works, and what are the working components. I would suggest if you find any spelling mistakes or any other grammatical or other type of errors in the documentation itself, you should point it on the can you mute yourself? Yeah. Okay, huh. So so you have okay, so you have the code in your local repository and you make changes. Yeah. So so if you find any documentation errors, you can pinpoint on the issues page, and uh, you may also able to fix it. So you can. So most of the first contributions I happen to see of any major contributor is through documentation. So initially, I would suggest you to contribute to documentation. It is basically changing some text or some markups, some HTML tags, or only these things are there. So you can very quickly make your first PR and you can mention it. So in your proposal, you can mention it, all the PRs you have made. Your number of PRs will increase in general and you will benefit. Also, keeping a keen eye on the documentation errors will eventually help you understand documentation easily. And documentations must be uh, very easy to understand. So I will, if you find that some particular text is hard to read as a user, so as a developer, you should try to fix it. So you can anytime hop into the issues phase and even suppose even a particular image is on is currently on the wrong topic or in the wrong orientation, you should go and change it. It is very easy to fix and a pretty quick PR you will get, and you will get to know the system as well how to send a PR. But documentation changes, I guess, would not help you in uh, if you don't have any code changes. So you will have to eventually make some PRs that changes the code in general. Um yeah, so GitHub also have a particular way of labeling the issues. So uh, organizations also put easy to fix or good first issues labels um, onto their issues. So what happens is that you can actually filter them out. These issues are very basic. Some of them are documentation errors itself, but there are code changes that they have already figured out how to do that. They just need someone to make changes. So these code changes are easy to do. You will get some code changes, you will get some PRs done, and uh, it would be very quick. So that is your second step on contributing. You can directly go to issues and filter out the easy to fix issues, and that you can fix it and to the send as a PR. Uh, Always ask questions on the mail. If they have a mailing list or the IRC channels or the Gitter channels, always ask questions. Always ping mentors. Always disturb them. Uh, One thing about GSOC is they should notice you. Notice you. So they should know that you are very eager to work on it. uh, there would someone who would be willing to help you, and you will get a mentor. So if you get a mentor just within the organization who is very helpful and very eager to help you, so that is but that is very good start. So you will eventually be able to commit faster, make changes faster because you can ask faster. So part of the process is you have to ask a lot, as much as you can. And yeah, that's basically. So with time, you will see yourself making very difficult, very high level pull requests, very high level changes, changing a lot of code, and even the mentors would be like easing on your or the restrictions, and uh, they would uh, even tell you to look at particular issues. They would even guide you to look at particular PRs which have not been completed so far. And there are so many things mentor can help you on. That would very much helpful to you if you just keep contributing. So it is an exponential graph. You will start contributing to very small documentation errors, very easy code changes, and then fixing minor level issues, then a feature request, and then you may eventually be working on the core code that is powering the whole software itself. So you just have to commit yourself that I'm going to do that. So one thing I did was I had a particular notebook where I have written that I will do 30 to 40 PR before I even start thinking about the proposal. So just uh, give that kind of a target that find something to work on, ask the mentors, disturb them, uh, look for the issues on that. So maybe that there are already worked PRs, pull requests. People have already worked on that issue, but they were not able to complete it. You can jump to them, take that, and start working over it and complete the PR. As much PR you do, as it would be easier for you to get into GSOC. So after you think that you have already finished a particular number of PRs and you are comfortable with the code base, you are comfortable with the project you want to contribute to for the next 3 months, uh, start writing the proposal. So proposal itself is, I guess, the most important document in your journey. So uh, you will have to again ask the mentors, again disturb them. So you write something, a very basic proposal, enlisting whatever you want to do, and just ping the mentor that is it good enough, or would you want something else to be worked on? So they would suggest. the more they would suggest, the more likely that you are getting selected. So based on that, your proposal should be based on the suggestion made by mentors, and it also should include a history of the work already being done uh, in the past. So if you uh, if I would say that the best way to write a proposal is, so it should include whatever you have done to the project. So your PRs, your issues, your reviews, if you have made some review on anyone else code, uh, even documentation fixes are should be there, and your PRs in general, your PR specific to the project should be mentioned in a different segment, and what kind of changes you made, how deep you went into the code. So it would be very beneficial if you write that, if you mention that particular PRs were very long, so you have to mention the amount of work done, the results. If you made some feature changes, if there was some feature request and you made them happen, you should mention it specifically. So that is your contribution. That does matter in your selection. Uh, and afterwards, the general understanding of the problem statement, if they have, and your very layman terms of the solution. So a mention of the very basic solution you are going to propose. So it is like something the project ideas. Uh, some organizations also mention their project ideas. Some of them also mention the the priority with which the project should happen. So it is like an organization is there, suppose, that works on a machine learning models or computer vision models, and they have a website. So they might have projects uh, including like a particular model that they have not implemented so far in computer vision, and a project describing that they want to fix a particular segment of their website that does not look good. So the first project would be more of would be of more priority to them. So if you spend enough time with them, you would know that even if you apply for the website project, uh, and there are people who are very good who are applying for the ML project, who are CV computer vision project, then there is a chance that the later project may not happen. So even if organizations say that all the proposals, all the projects are equal likely to happen, they do have some priority over projects. So you should try to know that the more the priority of the project, uh, the more is this chance to get selected, the project to get selected, and you to get selected. So try to find the best project, the project with the highest priority, and that is suitable for your level of understanding. So uh, and that is achievable. So that is another aspect. The mentors, the organization in general knows that some idea is suitable to be implemented in the coming 3 months. Some idea cannot be implemented, and some are very easy that it would be implemented in a day or a half. So it depends on you, and uh, and you should also ask the mentors that if the plan you are proposing is achievable. If you think that you can achieve this in 3 months, you should communicate this to your mentors that I know I can achieve this, so that they have an understanding that if you are selected, you would deliver the project or major segments of it. So your proposal is the key thing. You should mention the timeline itself. So timeline would be like some of the some projects want that you should mention each week's timeline. So you should mention that what you are going to deliver in the coming next week, other week, and the other week. So kind of like that. Some projects uh, would ask you just to mention your monthly progress or your like progress in 15 days, anything, but they would require you to mention a timeline. And based on your timeline, they can also infer if you understand the project, if you understand your solution, and if you know that some part is achievable and some part is not. So that is there. You should mention everything. Uh, that is and also some part should be that your current understanding with the stack being used. So maybe that you have contributed to something else, and you can transfer the knowledge from there. So for example, you have contributed to another ML project uh, in a very good way. You have made a large number of pull requests there, and you are interested in working in a different uh, organization. Maybe that the other organization may not be participating in GSOC this year. So your transferable knowledge is also very helpful to them, and your community bonding there is also very helpful to them. So they would get to know that this person has the understanding to complete this project. They would also get to know that this person has some community exposure to the community and is able to communicate in the community. Uh, so, from the organization point of view, if you think you are an organization and you have only the volunteers helping you, so you would want that as many people should stick with you. So, if you mention uh, after GSOC, if you are going to stay with the organization, complete the proposal projects, whatever you have not, you may not have completed, or in general, being with the community, that is also beneficial to the organization. They would understand that you plan to be a part of the community even after GSOC. You plan to help the community, and in general, you would stay with the community. Uh, if you have spent 3 months with them, you would try to spend more time with them. So this is all, I guess. So all the summarize as you should mention your transferable knowledge, whether from other organization, whether from university, whether from your self projects. If you have, you should mention them. The work you have done with the current organization, whether issues, whether PRs, whether pull code reviews, or in any other way, if you have helped them, just mention them and the number of pull requests you have made. Some organizations, or I guess almost all organizations, have some eligibility criteria that you at least have made one code pull request. So code pull request changing a particular part of code. So if you have not done that, so it may not be possible for you to select from the point of view of organization. So at least make one pull request. The more pull requests you make, the more it is beneficial to them, and it is for you as well. So that is there, and you should mention the problem statement, your understanding. You should mention the solution and your understanding of how you do that, the complete technical details about the changes you make. If you have some demos, if you have some, if you have built some part of the code or some APIs you have done or some designs you have done, you should present them. If you have already done some part, you should uh, show the demo, whether on YouTube or something. You should mention the link, and afterwards you should mention all the timeline. The more granular your timeline is, the more it is easy for them to uh, know that if you understand the plan. and your um, your commitment to stay with the community is also very important. We should also mention that, and that is, I guess, the best proposal you can make. And the chances are based on your actual ideas afterwards. So if you have started from September, or if you start from now, you will have enough time to understand uh, the whole organization, the whole code base, and so you cannot understand the whole code base, but the whole code base surrounding your project you will understand. Also, I may point out that some of you may have tried to contribute to open source, and I guess I've talked to some of you, and people have said that they get overwhelmed by by the amount of code, or by the large code base they have to work on. So I would suggest that you should not uh, try to go deep into the code base. Instead, you should just try to fix a particular issue. So uh, it would be very helpful if you learn a few commands with Git. And if you work on Linux terminal, so it would be very helpful if you learn a few terminal commands to automate many things. So there is a particular uh, grep command, so that is very helpful for people working on large code bases. It has helped me very much. So you can easily jump into a particular code segment where the change has to be made, where the error is spawning from. So then you can make changes there, and you can assume that the other parts of the code are working fine. So if they have documentation, just assume that the code is working fine. Don't go deeper into that, how that is working. Just leave it there. Fix your problem, and if it is not fixed, you then start to wonder if other parts of the code are also faulty. So if you also take a course, or some uh, you try some stuff with debugging in different languages. So different languages have different debugging tools. Uh, that will help you that to know which part of the code is not working. So then you can jump into that. So so if you are working in C++ code, you can look into GDB. That is a terminal debugging tool. Uh, we also have GUI debugging tools in PyCharm and other uh, other IDEs. So just look into that. Just uh, try to Google it, and if you are able to take, there is a course available. Take a course. These are the skills that you will eventually get, and that will help you even after GSOC, even after your university into the job. Uh, if you are able to debug properly, that is very good. That is a very helpful skill. Even if you don't know, that is not a problem. You will just take a lot of time to jump between the code. But that is also easy. That is also not hard. If you assume that other parts are working fine, you just go into the faulty part and fix that and come back. You don't need to know the whole code base. If you do a lot of if you do a lot of contributions, you will eventually get to know the code base. Every part you work on, you will know. So just leave it at that, and that is it. So that would help. That would be the, I guess, proposal wise. I guess we have covered all the points. And if you are able to make proposals based on that points, you can also find these points on other like on the internet. If you search Google properly, and these are the very basic points, but these are the only points that make a difference. Getting selected. So when you send your proposal, I would suggest even afterwards you should contribute something or something to the project. There's a timeline after which mentors are able to make a decision. Before that, they even they don't have a voice on that. So uh, they might look it very as a very good gesture that you are contributing even after sending a proposal. And we will look into the timeline after this. Yes. So I guess we are done here. So uh, um, I guess Kali has asked. Uh, Kali. Yeah, so I am reachable on LinkedIn, and you can find me on on Google very easily. Can students in any year apply? Yeah. So for first year, second year, third year, you can always apply. For fourth year, uh, you can also apply. Uh, it may be that in between your job, you may be working on a project with Google Summer of Code. So it is your risk to take, and it is your risk to convince the organization that you may still be able to work. You should be, yeah, I believe you should be very honest about your approach, and you should tell the organization that you may be working while the project will be happening, and try to convince them. If you may not be able to work at that time, it would actually the organization will lose the seat, and someone else would have be working at your place and would have completed the project. So that is just a suggestion. Uh, you can always whatever you want to tell the organization that is in your proposal. I will share the link for proposal. I guess it is also very easily available on Google if you search Ayush. So the proposal outlines every point I have said. So, I guess you can unmute yourself and ask. Uh, so this was all about GSOC. It will just take a few more minutes. I will also share a few other such programs that is equally beneficial and that also may have stipend or other goodies or stuff. So these programs are basically for you to get into get into open source, and I wish all of you try to get into open source. It is visible. Okay. So I guess first let me go to the timeline of this talk. So the timeline is already released. You can check it on the Google Summer of Code website, and I guess Aditya will share the link. So the organization the organization also have to make applications. So they will send applications until January 30. The organizations will be accepted and they will be announced on March 10. So on March 10, all the organization will be there. So uh, you should always start early, but at this point you will know which organization are going to take part in GSOC. So there may be an organization that does not make the list uh, in this while the results are announced. So you should keep looking at it. Uh, you can make an application from March 29, and you will the see, you will be accepted. The result will come on May 17th. So afterwards, there would be a community bonding period. Network issues for this. Okay, and visible now. Okay, so after every month, you have to pass evaluations. Mentors will pass or fail you based on your progress so far. So try to reach your goals as much as you can. And at the end of August, the results will be announced. So that is done. So this work is done. Some organizations may provide you another networking event, so you can meet your mentors physically afterwards. Depends on the organization. They can also provide other benefits, etc. Based on stipend, uh, students in India get 3,000 US dollars. So, so for us, it is about 2 lakhs for 3 months. That would be sent to you every month. About so for the first month you will be sent 60,000. For the second month 60,000. For the third month you will be sent about 80,000. So that would be sent in US dollars. So based on the currency rates, it will change. So you may get a few thousands more or a few thousand less. But in general, that is the stipend for Google Summer of Code. And again, other organizations, different organizations would provide different benefits. Maybe some of them provide courses, some of them provide other networking events, and etc. So that is all about Google Summer of Code. If you have any questions currently, any questions based on stipend or anything else? No. Okay. So that is about GSOC. There are other programs similarly designed to get students into open source. I will go through a few of them. So other one is Outreachy. It is mostly inclined towards girls and non-binary genders. So for girls, I guess you should apply to this internship as well. This is also very good. Uh, it is also similar to GSOC, so everything is almost similar. The stipend is a little more in this case, so try to apply for that as well. If you don't have any knack for coding and uh, more into technical writing or creative writing, I guess you should apply for Google's Season of Docs. So documentation is also a very crucial part of our open source organization. Google Season of Docs allows you to contribute documentation to the organization. It happens after GSOC, I guess. So please check with the timeline. And the stipend is, I guess, similar. Again, check with the website. You will find it on Google. But it is also a very good program. Uh, you write technical documentation for them, and I guess it has become similarly competitive. So try to apply if you want to write documentation for 3 months. There is this community bridge mentorship program that is funded by the Linux Foundation, and it is also I guess the competition is here very high because they have only slots for 2 or 3 people for each project. But unlike Google Summer of Code, these projects uh, come come live anytime in the year. There are 2 or 3, I guess, uh, timelines for this. So currently, like there are already 3 projects that is being there. So even you can go on to this website and apply for them. So there is a chance that you can get selected based on your again. There is a proposal and everything. So. Uh, so other programs are also there, like Julia does have Julia Summer of Code. So Julia is a new language for like scientific computing, I guess. So people who are not able to get into Google Summer of Code, uh, Julia transfers them into Julia Summer of Code so that they can still make a contribution. And I guess all organizations may have a secondary Summer of Code based funded by their own funds. So uh, you can look into that as well. So or you can specifically apply here. Rails Girl Summer of Code. This is again for women only. So that is also very good. So you can apply for that. Then there is Open Mainframe Projects Mentorship Program. So it has a stipend of I guess $6,000, which is like 4 lakhs. So you can also apply for that. It happens in the summer itself. So I will share the links with Aditya and he will share with you all. And that is there. Other than these projects, yep. Yes, Aditya. Aditya. Okay, okay. So that is there. So these are the like full-time projects you work on 3 months. There are the fun projects you can do. Like currently Hacktoberfest is happening. So Hacktoberfest, you contribute to open source projects, and uh, if you complete uh, like I think there are 12 or 13 PRs. I guess I don't know. You check with this. You will get a T-shirt and or you can plant a tree from this year. So you can put it on your LinkedIn, or you will get recognition for that, and you can uh, like get started with your open source journey from here itself. So this is also a very good program. There is GirlScript Summer of Code. I guess we have a GirlScript chapter on our college itself. So uh, they have some, I guess they provide some goodies or anything. And this is similar. I guess they also have some stipend, but I think again it is for girls. So for all women, you can apply here. And some colleges, some universities also have their own open source uh, programs. So that is KVAO, that is for from IIT Kharagpur. That happens in the winter, and you can start your journey from there. So these are all the programs you can start your journey. There are quite a number of projects, programs like that. So there is a list of uh, all the programs that happen and they may have happened. So this is almost uh, current list. So I will share with you. And There are so many programs. Some of them provide stipends, some of them don't provide. Some of them just provide goodies, and so far is there. And so you, I believe you can start your journey from Hacktober first. Uh, go on GitHub repos and look for issues that are marked Hacktoberfest and just make commits and do. Okay, so I guess I'm done here. Uh,